That win felt big for about 2 weeks. Then your new title, raise, or launch started to feel normal. You open the email again, check the Slack congratulations, look at the badge, and there is no lift. That is hedonic adaptation. It is the brain resetting again to baseline faster than your mood can keep up. You do not need more ambition to understand this. You need the right mechanism. This is why the promotion you chased, the client you closed, or the product you shipped can feel powerful on day one and ordinary by Friday. The first 30 seconds of the click promise is already here. Your brain normalizes wins fast. What you call a flat personality may be a fast reset in the reward system, not a broken character. The part that feels like failure is often a system doing what it was built to do. By the end of this video, the question will not be why the win stopped feeling good. It will be what your brain still counts as real progress. Hedonic adaptation sits inside the brain's reward system, especially the dopamine circuit that tracks change, not permanent possession. One part of that system is the ventral striatum, which helps flag when something is better or worse than expected. Another is the prefrontal cortex, the control system that keeps goals online after the first burst of excitement fades. When a win arrives, dopamine activity shifts with the surprise. When the win becomes expected, the signal drops. That is normal. It is how the brain saves attention for new information. Researchers have shown the same pattern in reward learning experiments, where responses shrink after a reward becomes predictable. The exact details of the popular version are often oversimplified, but the core mechanism is well established. Repeated exposure reduces emotional impact when nothing new is changing. The nervous system treats a promotion, a raise, or public praise as information, then updates. That update is useful in stable environments. It lets people stop overreacting to every good event and keep scanning for what changed next. The cost is that a career win can become background noise while the demands around it keep increasing. That is the real pressure on the viewer. The problem starts before the celebration ends. You post the news, answer the congratulations, and then the brain begins sorting the event into the category of known. Once something is known, it stops demanding the same level of attention. That is the point of adaptation. It protects focus. It also means the first day in a new role can feel strangely ordinary if nothing in the environment still signals surprise. This is where the hedonic treadmill comes in. The popular phrase is simple, but the mechanism is specific: baseline shifts. What once felt like an upgrade becomes the new reference point, so emotional intensity falls while responsibility stays. You still have the higher rent, the bigger team, the harder deadline, and the expectation to keep performing. The nervous system gets less signal from the reward, but more signal from the workload. Documented work on reward prediction error explains why. When an outcome is better than expected, the brain gives it a learning signal. When it matches expectation, that signal shrinks. Once the promotion is no longer a surprise, the brain updates, and the spike fades. This is not a moral judgment. It is a prediction system. That same system is why some parts of life stay alive longer than a title does. New information, uncertain feedback, visible progress, and social comparison all keep the signal moving. Pure repetition does not. A career win often arrives with a burst, then a plateau. The mind adapts, the calendar fills, and the badge on your lanyard stops feeling like proof. What remains is the gap between the story you expected and the flatness you feel. The next step is to look at why the brain normalizes some rewards in days while other forms of progress keep registering as real. But there is a detail almost everyone gets wrong here. The brain is not rewarding possession. It is rewarding change. In the classic reward prediction error model, dopamine rises when an outcome is better than expected and falls when it is worse. Once the outcome becomes expected, the signal shrinks. That is why the first bonus, the first public praise, or the first week in the new role lands hard, and then the same achievement starts to feel like office furniture. That pattern is visible in the learning experiments that built this field. In Schultz recordings from primates, the response was strongest when a reward was unexpected, then moved back to the cue that predicted it once the reward became routine. The reward did not disappear. The surprise did. At work, that turns into a strange mismatch. You get the title, you see the email signature, and the nervous system has already filed it under known. This is where the treadmill keeps speeding up. Hedonic adaptation means a gain is folded into baseline, so the floor rises, but the feeling of arrival does not stay. That is not just a mood problem. It is an evolutionary mismatch. A brain shaped to notice brief changes now lives inside careers built from long chains of abstract rewards. Salary bands, promotion ladders, performance reviews, follower counts. The old system was useful when change meant food, threat, or social rank. It is less useful when the threat is a quarterly target and the food is a notification. The cost compounds because the environment keeps asking for more while the reward gets quieter. You celebrate on Friday, feel the old dread by Monday, and the calendar is already full again. The win raises expectations, not satisfaction. That is why studies on life satisfaction show the same broad pattern. People adapt to good events faster than they expect, and the emotional lift fades unless the surrounding conditions keep changing. Then the last layer lands. Repeated wins can become part of identity, not because they nourish you, but because they become proof you must keep earning. The self turns into a scorecard. You open the laptop, see the new title in the email signature, and feel almost nothing because the brain has normalized it already. At that point, the question is no longer whether the achievement mattered. The question is what the brain still counts as progress, and why some forms of progress vanish while others hold their place. The fix works because the circuit responds to contrast, not pep talks. If reward depends on change, then the job is to make change visible again. That is a neuroplasticity problem. The brain learns the pattern you repeat, and it keeps the strongest version of whatever your environment keeps feeding it. Willpower loses here because it is trying to overpower a prediction system with a feeling. A system changes the prediction itself. When constant novelty and status noise keep hitting the brain, each win gets absorbed faster. When you reduce that noise, add clear markers, and space rewards, the nervous system has room to register the difference. This is where the process matters. The ventral striatum tracks whether something is worth attention right now. The prefrontal control system holds the larger goal online long enough to compare today with last week, not just today with the last notification. So the repair is not care more. It is build a setting where the brain can see contrast, not just accumulation. That means the first step is environmental. Stop feeding endless comparison. Mute the feeds, reduce the updates, and cut the signals that turn every gain into background noise. The second step is measurement. Give the week a visible marker that is smaller than the trophy and easier to feel. One shipped draft. One solved problem. One client follow-up. 1 hour of deep work completed. The third step is identity. Attach the self-image to the act of building, not the single win. Then each repeat is not a verdict. It is another visible proof of the pattern. That is how the reward system relearns meaning, clear contrast, regular reflection, delayed comparison, and a role built around process. The next section turns that into a practical sequence you can apply without waiting for motivation to return. Start with the cue field around the win. If your day is full of pings, dashboards, and constant status checking, the brain never gets a clean moment to notice progress. So the first change is to lower the noise. Put the metrics in one place. Check them on a schedule. Make the celebration discrete, not constant. A reward only works as information if it is not diluted by 10 other signals. Then set a weekly measure that you can actually see. Not the final title. Not the whole career arc. One concrete output that marks movement. Pages written, calls made, cases closed, code merged, proposals sent. This gives the brain a smaller comparison point, and smaller comparisons are easier to register. It is the same reason a long project feels dead until you break it into visible stages. After that, move identity onto the process. Say, and act like, I am the kind of person who builds, reviews, revises, and ships. That is not a slogan. It is a training signal. Each week becomes evidence of the role, not a test of whether the trophy still feels exciting. Now return to the flatness that started this. The deflated trophy was never proof that the win was fake. It was proof that your brain made it ordinary. Your brain normalizes wins fast. That is the thesis, and it is a plain biological fact, not a character flaw. So the response is not more pressure. It is a system that keeps meaning visible, less comparison noise, smaller markers, delayed reward, and a self-image built around the act of progress. If this changed how you see your own wins, the next one goes deeper. You do not need more willpower. You need a system that keeps meaning visible. And you are not the person who failed to enjoy success. You are the person whose brain adapted to it exactly as designed.